So here is lesson 3.8, and the objectives in this lesson are going to be to find the y-intercept and the equation of a line given 2 points, and to use point-slope form, and to convert between point-slope form and slope-intercept form of a line. So basically, throughout this entire lesson, we are going to be writing lots of equations of line given y-intercepts and 2 points, or a y-intercept and a slope, or just 2 points, and that's what we're going to be doing. All right, so here's the class section. All right, so it says, congratulations, your boss thinks highly enough of your organizational skills to put you in charge of a gala to benefit a local no-kill shelter. You find an appropriate banquet hall and are told that hosting 150 people is going to cost $6,500. If you up the number of guests to 200, the bill jumps to $8,500. Okay, so let's think about what do we have right here. So we're being told 2 different amounts of money given the number of people. If there's 150 people, it costs $6,500, and if it costs 200, if there's 200 people, it costs $8,500. Okay, so try and think, what is that going to represent? All right, so let's move on. Number 1, if you make the reasonable assumption that the relationship between the number of people and cost is linear, do we have enough information to find a model for the cost? And by model, they mean find an equation. All right, so let's go back to the numbers that we are given. Think about, what do you think that those numbers that were given represent? So people is going to represent our X, and the money is going to represent our Y. So because 150 people, X, is going to cost 6,500 Y, that's a point. And 200 people, X, costs $8,500 is Y, that's also another point. So that means that we have 2 points, and that is enough information to find the slope. And then once we have the slope, you can find as many other points as you want. So yes, we do have an equation, enough information to write a line. Okay, so question 2 says, which quantity is going to be the independent and what's going to be your dependent? I just spoke about that. Number of people is my X, which is my independent, and the cost is my Y, which is my dependent. Okay, so let's find the slope. So we identified our 2 points, right? We've been talking about that, and I'm going to take those 2 points, plug them into my slope formula, and we find that the slope is equal to 40. Okay, question 4 says, what does the slope mean? It means that the cost goes up $40 for every extra guest. So for each additional guest that come to this gala, you're going to have an additional $40 cost. Okay, so now the question is, can we use this information that we just found to write the equation of a line? And the answer is yes. 2 things that we need to find the equation of a line are the slope and the y-intercept. And the thing is that we know the slope. We just found it in question number 3, and we know that the slope is 40. But the thing is that we don't know the y-intercept, right? The y-intercept is our initial cost of, like, what is the fee to hold, just to rent the banquet hall, and we don't know that cost. They never told it to us. So we have to find that out. So there's 2 ways that we can go about doing this. I'm going to show you the first way. And we know that y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form, and there's a couple things that we know. The first thing we know is m. M, remember, is our slope, and I'm going to replace m with the number 40. So that gives us the equation y equals 40x plus b. Now, coming up here, we also know something else. We know a point, 150, 6,500. And you could have chosen the other point as well. It does not matter which point you choose. I just chose this one because it had smaller numbers, but you could choose the other point. You will get the same answer. And what do we know about this point? We know that x is 150, and we also know that y is 6,500. So if I take this equation that we found over here with our slope in it, and I replace y with 6,500, and I replace this x with 150, we get this equation. 6,500 is equal to 40 times 150 plus b. 40 times 150 is 6,000. So now we have the equation 6,500 equals 6,000 plus b. And then if I subtract 6,000 from 6,500, we get 500, which means that the y-intercept is 500. So we get y equals 40x plus 500 is my final equation. And the next question says, what does your y-intercept mean? It's 500, and it means that they charge $500 if there's no guests. So it's basically, this is the fee just to book the room, okay? And I know my slope is 40. I know my y-intercept is 500, which means that this is my final equation, y equals mx plus b, 40x plus 500. All right, so the steps that I just took to do all this work in question number 5 is outlined here. It says find the slope the usual way. We just did that. Step 2, substitute the slope for m and the x and y coordinates of one of the points. Make sure you highlight it, only has to choose whichever one you want, into y equal mx plus b. And this gives you an equation that you can solve for b. And now that once you find m and b, you're going to replace them into this equation to find the equation of the line. So these are super important steps. This will help you write the equation of a line if you're given 2 points. And I'm also going to talk about another way to do it in a little bit. So just keep it in mind, this is just one way that you can do it. All right, so now we're going to take this information that we have, and question number 8 says graph the line that you found and then the 2 points you were originally given. Okay, so first thing is, here are the 2 points that we were originally given. 150 people cost $6,000, 200 people cost $8,500. Okay, and we know that y-intercept, we just found it, was 500. So this dot that I have right here, that's my y-intercept of 500. And I'm going to connect the line dots to form a line. All right. So we know that the slope of any line connecting any 2 points is 40. Okay. Now, just keep in mind that 40 is the cost per one person. So it's not going to look like 40 because the x-axis is going up by 50 people. So really, if you were going to go from one to the next, it's going to be, you have to find the cost of 50 people, which is why it's increasing by 2,000, because 40 times 50. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's why it doesn't look like it's increasing by 40, because this x-axis is not counting by ones. Okay, so now this next process is going to walk us through finding an alternative way to finding this equation, which some of you might find a little bit easier. So it says call one point on the graph x comma y. Every point is always x comma y. And then find the slope between that generic point and this point, 150 comma 6,500. So that's the point we're given. And we know that the slope is equal to 40. So I'm going to write y take away 6,500 over x take away 150. Remember, x and y are just random numbers, any point on that line. And we know that that will always be equal to 40. And using cross multiplication, so we set up a proportion. I'm going to do x minus 150 times 40, which is where this came from. So 40 parentheses x minus 150, because we have to multiply 40 into both, is equal to y minus 6,500. And this is what we have as point slope form, okay? And this is going to be an easy way to write an equation of a line, because as long as you have 1 point and a slope, you can always plug it right into this format. Okay, so I'm going to look at right here. This right here is going to probably break it down a little simpler. So the point slope form is always going to be this equation. Y minus y sub 0 equals m times x minus x sub 0. Okay, so what does this mean? So y and x, okay, the one without the zeros. So this y and this x are always going to just stay y and x. You are never going to replace those. But the y sub 0 and this x sub 0, those are going to be the point that you choose. That's what you're going to replace that point into. So x is going to replace x sub 0 and y is going to replace y sub 0. And m, remember, is our slope. So here's an example. A line through the point 2, 7 with a slope of -3. So remember, this 2 is our x, the 7 is a y. So if you look here, so 2 is replacing x, 7 is replacing this y, and the slope of -3 is going to replace m. And when you plug all those numbers into that equation, it's going to look like this. And this is an equation of a line that we could use instead of doing all that work that we did all the way up here in question number 5. Okay, so question number 5 might be a little bit more confusing, but if you remember this equation right here, this point slope form, You could take a point and a slope that we're given, and we can use that information, just get the equation right away. And then we're going to talk in a little bit about how to take this equation and turn it into slope-intercept form, which is what they typically want you to write it in. All right, so it says solve the equation from question 11 for y. So we're going to take this equation that we got here in question 11. Remember, this is going back to our GALA problem. And I'm going to solve it for y. And the reason we're solving it for y is because y equals mx plus b is an important equation in math. So 40 times x is 40x. 40 times negative 150 is minus 6,000. Nothing's going to change on this side because there's nothing to combine or distribute. Now I'm going to combine like terms. Well, 6,000 and 6,500 are my only like terms. So I'm going to bring those together. Now, you might have a hard time figuring out which one comes to which side. But remember, our goal is to get y by itself. And if I want to get y by itself, I need to bring this negative 6,500 over to this side. And then if I do that, y will be alone. Okay, so I'm going to add 6,500 to both sides. So we get 40x plus 500 is equal to y. And you should notice that this is the exact same equation that we got all the way back up here in question number 5. Y equals 40x plus 500. So this is just a much simpler way of writing an equation of a line. All right, so here's did you get it here? I think it's important to do a bunch of these problems, and you're going to see a lot of these problems in ALEKS as well throughout this week. So make sure you do those and use this information to help you. So it says write the point slope form of an equation describing the cost of a party using the point 280, 500. Then show that you get the same result by solving for y. Okay, so 200 and 8,500. Okay, 200 is my x, 8,500 is my y. So y minus 8,500, y's go together, equals m times x minus 200 because 200 is my x. Okay, I'm going to distribute the m into both. And we get y minus 8,500 equals mx minus 200m. And I'm just realizing here, these m, I think they wanted me to use the 40 from earlier. So you would put a 40 here and then distribute the 40 in. And then I also have the, so that's not, I didn't really do that one very well. So you should get the same equation that we got in number 12, y equals 40x plus 500. Okay, number 2, find the equation of a line. If x is -3, y is 8, and a slope of 5. So y minus 8, because y is 8, is equal to 5, my slope, times x plus 3. Okay, key point. Why does this become a plus 3 and not a minus? Well, the formula has minus, but notice how x is minus 3. So if I have 2 negatives, it's going to turn it into a plus. Okay, I distributed the 5. So we have 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 3 is 15. Now I got to get y by itself. So I added 8 to both sides. So we have y equals 5x plus 15 plus 8 gives us y equals 5x plus 23. All right, so that's the end of the classwork for section 3.8. I want you guys to try the group work section on your own. If you can communicate with other people in the class and do the group work together through different online methods, that would be great. If not, try it on your own. Check back to the next video and check your solutions.